So that's no good. I'm going to have to move the bridge. Hi, Glenn here, Monster Guitars. This guitar is not too far away from being finished, although I'm about to give this a bit of a setback because it needs some work doing. The Viper, nice looking guitar, nice sounding guitar from what I can gather so far, but it has an issue, which I will explain shortly, but first I will demonstrate it. Basically, the intonation is out. Now, correct intonation means that the note that is played at each fret is the correct one, basically. And one of the easy, quick ways to check that the intonation is more or less right, if you're confident in the spacing between your frets, is to do this. Firstly, play your open string, just because. Now play the 12th fret natural harmonic. So that's the halfway point along the string, meaning that when you play the 12th fret, it should sound that note. But actually it says this. Or that's not quite a semitone higher, but it's definitely higher. What has caused this? I will show you. Come and take a look. I'll show you what the problem is, and then we'll talk about how I'm going to fix it. So I'll try to make this brief, because I know you don't like to hear me rabbiting on about things. Basically, if you're fretting a note and it sounds too high, that means your strings are too short. And if you think about that for a moment, you'll see why. I won't explain it just now, maybe some other time. But that's what's happening here. When I fret a note on the 12th fret, it plays too high because my strings are too short, because my bridge is too far that away. How did I manage to make such a silly mistake? Well, I'll use this Allen key as a pointer. So I drilled the holes for the posts on the nominal scale length, although I took into account the fact that the bridge would be slightly angled because these strings need to be longer. But that one there, the one at the skinny end, is on the nominal scale length of 24 3/4 inches. I did that making the assumption that the edge of the saddle where the string started vibrating would align with the middle of the post. It does sometimes, but you always have to check. I obviously didn't check this time because, as you can see, that's not the case here. The edge of that saddle is clearly that away, meaning my strings are too short. There are little grub screws in there that you can use to adjust your bridge, but I would need to have them standing all the way out on the end of the screws, and you should never have things adjusted to the extreme because you want to have a bit of adjustment either way. That's my philosophy anyway. So that's no good. I'm going to have to move the bridge. So the main tools that I'm going to need to do this job are a drill bit, because we're dealing with post holes, a plug cutting bit to create the plug that I'm going to use to fill the old hole, and some fairly standard objects like a pencil for marking the correct scale length, and this screwdriver for maneuvering the posts. Am I going to need anything else? Yes, I think I am actually, because I'm going to be taking out the studs as well. I forgot about those. So I will need a soft-faced hammer. Let's get to work and see what tools I've forgotten. Slacken these strings off, then I can take off the bridge. To get these post studs out, you need an object in the bottom. You could use a small ball bearing if you had one. I don't, so I'll use a screw, which can easily be tipped out again. Don't make it something tight-fitting. And now, you put the post back in, and you tighten it up, and it will press against the object in the bottom of the hole, and it will raise up the stud, like so. just a quick update. I was going to use a 12mm drill bit just to clean that hole out, which is 12mm. I decided against doing that, as you can possibly see. Where are we? Let's see if I can help you to see that. Yeah, there are ridges and marks inside that hole from the stud. There's also a small amount of damage around there, which I did when drilling the hole somehow. I forget how that came about, but I remember that it did. So I've decided to, as I've started there, to drill slightly larger than 12mm. I'm drilling 15mm, so if I were to get that dead center, there'd be 1.5mm either side of the original hole, and I'll use my 15mm plug cutter to make a plug to fill that, and I think that will just produce a nicer result, a better fit, and make it easier to drill the new holes. That will not be deep enough. I will make a bunch of plugs just like that. There's a couple more sitting in there waiting for me, and then we'll do some plugging. Good. The grain's not going to match. That's okay. Most of this plug is actually going to be drilled out again when I put the proper hole, and put the hole in for the correct placement. So I'm not too worried about grain direction at the moment. I'm just worried about filling the gap. And because I'm somewhat lazy, I had hoped to be able to do this without removing hardware, but that may not be possible. At least I'm going to have to remove these so that I can cut these plugs flush. But I will just let that dry for now. Okay, let's see how we go. So you can see the nominal scale length line there. So that saddle there is just touching it, and that one is back a fair bit, which is the way that it needs to be. Should it just be touching it, or should it be back ever so slightly? Well, I've got lots of adjustment in the screw there, so if it needs to move back, it will only just have to move back. So I'm quite happy with where that's sitting. I think that's the ideal placement for this bridge. So I'm not having a good time here trying to refinish it. It's just something about the fact that it has already been finished means that even when I sand it back, the stain does not adhere the same way. I think the only way I'm going to be satisfied with this, if I'm going to be satisfied at all, is to take the neck off, take the hardware off, tape up the holes, or tape up the control holes from the other side, and completely resand the top right down to the barest wood and do it again. And I don't want to do that, but I can see that it's just not going to work unless I do. So that's what I'll do. While I was finishing the top, I decided to give the whole body a once over, and I got to thinking. I was going to say, you can help me decide, but you can't, because, you know, the video will be finished before you watch it, obviously. So this guitar doesn't have a, what do you call it, a belly contour, a belly carve over there. And that's intentional because, well, number one, it's quite a thin body. which doesn't lend itself to putting certainly any deep contours on the back. And also because this is quite an extreme bevel on the front here, I didn't want to go interfering with that and making things too thin. But they really are comfortable, and you notice it when the guitar doesn't have one. And I'm thinking maybe I'll put just a very shallow contour there. In fact, the more I think about it, the more I think it's a good idea, because if I bought this guitar, that's what I would want. So I think I shall just do that with some files and sanding and scraping. That's all I need. I had been going to just sit my control cavity cover on the surface of the back of the guitar and screw it on, which is tolerable. One of the reasons I was going to do that, other than being lazy, is that this is quite a thin guitar body, as I've mentioned before, and that push-pull pot extends quite far into the body. So if I cut a recess into the edge of this cavity to sit a cover in there, I ran the risk of the cover touching the back of that pot, which I don't want. But I've had a look, and there is a little bit of room, just a little bit. So I'm going to do that. So I've cut a template for the recess, and I've cut a template to make the cover that will sit fairly snugly in there. So let's just route that. I didn't show you the whole process because it's just like the process of staining the body, but doesn't it look nice? I haven't put the oil on yet, that will come next. Actually no, I'll drill the holes next and then oil it. And now there is something rather nice looking and perfectly functional on the back that provides visual continuity with the colours and grain pattern on the top. Okay, so let's again put some strings on this, set it up and see how she plays. So after all that, after relocating the bridge, did it work? Well, yes it did. I'll show you that it worked. That note is not ringing as clearly as I would like, so I'm going to check the nut and check the saddle part of the bridge there, but this is what I'm trying to show you. 12th fret harmonic, 12th fretted note. Okay, and that's much better. So the intonation is okay. I may adjust it very slightly here, but it's basically okay. There is one further thing that I'm going to change on this guitar, possibly two. Let me show you. One is something I may change after investigating. That slightly dull note, how the string does not ring as I would like it. I noticed it just now on the open string. It sounds like something is very slightly muting the string, possibly there, which just means I need to clean out the slot on the nut. Possibly here, which is interesting. There are no saddles there. So I'm going to investigate that and make a change maybe, and I'll tell you what change I made. But the other change, the more obvious one to me, is this. This pickup was listed as a neck pickup, and so I bought it for that purpose, and I've installed it there. But as you can see, the spacing for the poles isn't quite right. The distance between that pole and that pole is 50 millimeters, which that's the standard spacing on a Strat anyway for the middle pickup, which sits here where the strings are slightly further apart. The standard spacing for a neck pickup is exactly what my ruler says about the distance between the strings, 48 millimeters. And you can get single coil pickups that have 48 millimeter poles. I'm going to swap that pickup out. It's a nice sounding pickup. I'll just reuse it on another guitar and move it further in that direction. But this is going to introduce another delay, so I'll end the video here. I'm going to get a new pickup and then we'll continue.